If your life is destined to be labeled a devil, will you choose to back down, or forge it into the sharpest weapon? In the spring of 1507, in a pile of scattered rocks in Navarre, Spain, a naked corpse lay pierced by spears and abandoned in the wilderness. He died without even leaving a formal identity, yet he once made kings across Italy tremble through the night. Cesare Borgia. This name was once the most terrifying epithet of the Renaissance. He was the combination of fox and lion described by Machiavelli, the only perfect prototype of a ruler and the prince. Tonight, let us follow the flickering firelight and walk into his real life with this story that needs no desperate remembrance. He was the Pope's illegitimate son, a challenger burdened with impure blood. He once said, "Either be Caesar, or be nothing at all." In his cold eyes like an abyss, there was never faith. Only the will to build his own divine kingdom through violence and intrigue in this hypocritical world. The rift of the story begins in the ringing summer of 1492. Rodrigo Borgia, his father Pope Alexander VI, bought the papal throne with chests of gold and endless promises. At 17, Cesare was forced to don the sacred robes of a cardinal. Yet hidden within his wide sleeves was a dagger ready to be drawn at any moment. He loathed the candlelight and stale hymns of the church. He preferred galloping horses at dawn, and secret execution orders signed behind closed doors. Rome at that time was a quagmire corrupted entirely by wealth and lust. The Borgia family grew like a poisonous poppy blooming from this mire. An irreconcilable tension arose between Cesare and his elder brother Giovanni, the designated military heir favored by their father, while Cesare was trapped in the rigid rituals of the church. Until one damp night, Giovanni's body was fished out of the Tiber River by fishermen, stabbed 9 times. Cesare shed no tears. He stood quietly behind his father's throne, his gaze chillingly calm. It was the first time he showed the world his logic. On the path to becoming Caesar, any obstacle, even blood relatives, must be erased like dust. From then on, he cast aside his cardinal robes like worthless rags and donned dark armor. He would no longer be God's messenger, but the sharpest blade of the Papal States. Cesare Borgia began his expansion that shocked all of Europe. Unlike old-fashioned generals, he was more like a cold, precise instrument. He employed Leonardo da Vinci not merely for art, but to design siege weapons capable of destroying city walls in an instant. He aimed to swallow the small states of northern Italy one by one. His methods chilled even the most seasoned politicians of his time. At Senigallia, he staged history's most perfect hangman banquet. He smiled and invited the mercenary leaders who had betrayed him. Beneath the cover of fine wine and laughter, he merely waved his hand, and those leaders were strangled in their chambers that very night. Machiavelli was present at the scene, witnessing Cesare's icy calm firsthand. He wrote in his notes, "If any ruler in this world could unify Italy, it would be this Borgia." Cesare conquered not only on the battlefield but also displayed uncanny fairness in courts and internal affairs. He appointed ruthless subordinates to purge old forces, then executed those very subordinates himself to win the people's favor. He turned politics into an art of calculated murder. Every drop of blood spilled was precisely weighed into the balance of power by him. Under his rule, Romagna achieved unprecedented peace and order. Yet this peace was built upon the heads of traitors hanging at every crossroad. Nevertheless, Cesare's empire was essentially a sandcastle built upon the lifespan of the Pope. Rumors of an illicit bond between him and his sister Lucrezia lingered like haunting mist over Castel Sant'Angelo. Some said their bond transcended sibling ties, forming a twisted alliance against the world. Cesare held an almost pathological control over Lucrezia's marriage engagements. He tore up betrothals time and again, even having Lucrezia's beloved husband killed, merely to turn her into a more valuable pawn for family alliances. Amid this extreme repression and madness, Cesare knew better than anyone that all his glory rested upon his father's precarious papal crown. In the summer of 1503, the air of Rome hung heavy with plague and death. After an ordinary banquet, Pope Alexander VI suddenly fell ill, and Cesare too slipped into high fever and unconsciousness. Rumors spread that they had intended to poison a cardinal, only to accidentally drink the poisoned wine they had prepared themselves. As Cesare writhed in violent vomiting and convulsions, his father passed away. The pillar upholding all his power crumbled to the ground. He had devised 1,000 plans to seize Italy, Yet he never calculated that death would take his protector at his weakest moment. The collapse of power always comes far faster than its rise. Within days of his father's death, allies who had once sworn loyalty to Cesare turned against him like wolves scenting blood. The new Pope Julius II, known as the Warrior Pope, was the lifelong enemy of the Borgias. With the cruelty of a cat toying with a mouse, he gradually reclaimed all of Cesare's territories. Cesare was imprisoned. He attempted to escape, to seek a chance at survival in Spain, yet the era of Caesar was gone forever. He plummeted from the peak to the mire, losing not only his lands but also the identity that had made him stand above all others. No longer the Duke of Valentinois, he became nothing more than a wandering sellsword seeking employment. In 1507, he charged into battle recklessly in that meaningless siege, rushing alone into enemy lines and falling riddled with more than 20 wounds, dying in an unknown mountain valley. Stripped of his magnificent black armor, his corpse looked small and lonely, nothing like the devil who once made all of Europe hold its breath. His life blazed across the night sky of the Renaissance like a shooting star, dazzling beyond measure, yet absurdly fleeting. He sought to challenge the old order ruled by bloodline and divine authority through sheer malice and cold logic, only to be crushed and erased like an ant by that very order. Cesare Borgia's tomb was moved countless times over the centuries, even dug up repeatedly, for the Church deemed his sins unworthy of resting on sacred ground. Yet he gained immortality elsewhere, in Machiavelli's writings, in every chamber where power is studied. He was the first man to separate politics from morality. Through his devastating downfall, he revealed the truth of power to later generations. When a man stakes all his chips on luck in the favor of others, his empire is destined to be nothing but a mirage. Perhaps for him, dying abandoned among rocky wasteland was truer to himself than growing old confined within gilded walls. He pursued, destroyed, and ruled. For a time shrouded in historical mist, he truly stood alone as Caesar. Tonight's story reminds us of the cruelty of power, and beneath his cold exterior, the fatal ambition born from an overwhelming fear of ordinariness. The fire has faded. The waters of the Tiber still flow quietly, carrying away all sins and glory. Good night.